Hello. Today we'll be discussing the John Wick graphic novel collection thingy. John Wick himself was originally created by Derek Kolstad. This collection was written by Greg Pak. The art was by Giovanni Valletta for volumes 1 and 2, and Matt Gaudio for volumes 3 through 5. The color was done by Inlight Studios, and the letters were done by Tom Napolitano. It was also published by Dynamite Comics. The length is a nice even 120 pages in terms of actual comic pages, made up of 5 different issues of an even 24 pages. There are some extra pages at the end, but they are mostly covers with photo references from the movies, with Keanu and like actual photos that they then made covers of. As I previously said, it is not a graphic novel, it is more of a collection, as it is split into 5 separate issues of the John Wick comic series, just kind of combined into one nice little package. In terms of act breaks, the the separation is pretty even. It does follow, I think, our fourth structure, 6-12-6, though I did notice that usually the act ones are a standard like 6-ish, 6 or less, like probably 6-5-4 pages. The act twos tend to be a little bit longer, and the act three tends to be a bit shorter. I think they usually kept the act one around an even 6 pages and then pulled pages from act 3 and put them into act 2 so that they were able to expand out the conflict and shorten down the resolution a little bit just to help them build tension and make more conflict for the next issue. So I think it does follow our pattern and does a really good job of sticking to it. In terms of whose story it is John Wick's story, as expected. His goal is to get revenge on these 3 people who attacked him when he was in a village in El Paso, Texas, during his childhood. The Kill Bills, I believe they are called. There are 2 of them, and then one of them is a woman named Calamity, and all 5 issues cover his quest to get revenge on these people and them trying to stop him from killing them, of course. And as we all know, John Wick doesn't stop. I think the story has a solid arc. It's got the classic John Wick formula, like we start with seeing why he has this desire for revenge, then we see him kind of prepare, we see him fight, we see him manipulate his own enemies to kind of turn the odds ever so slightly in their favor. He turns the enemies against each other, he sets himself up for success, stuff like that, and he just pulls John Wick antics and survives things that no other man could do and does things that no other man could do. So if you're into classic action, I think you'll really enjoy this graphic novel. The clear beginning and middle and end is a little bit hazy because it is split up into 5 links, or 5 issues. It's not one solid story, but thankfully it's pretty easy to tell that like the first couple issues are sort of the beginning, then 3 and 4 are in the middle, and then 5 is the very quick resolution. So it's still a nice round number, even though the ending isn't quite as solid if it was just maybe like one big piece. I don't think the characters really have an arc, but to be fair, I don't think that's really the intention. I think John Wick's arc is shown more in the movies than it's shown in this graphic novel. I think John pretty much stays the same person from the beginning to the end. He's just on a classic revenge plot. He doesn't really have to improve as a person, per se. This is before he's really a member of the assassin organization. This seems to take place before the movies, like a sort of prequel. So other than him finally accepting his position in the organization, he doesn't really need to change in terms of like a character arc and evolve as a character, but that doesn't really seem to matter too much because after all, most people watch John Wick for the amazing choreography and fight scenes, which do still actually fit pretty well in comics. I think the ability that the artist has to show motion and convey combat through still images is pretty impressive. But the lack of an arc didn't really seem to bother me too much. I think the story had really effective transitions. They do some time jumps from the present day back to John's past and his reasons as to why he wants revenge on these people, but they always make it very clear because up in the corner, what do I say in blue text? El Paso, Texas, 12 years ago. I believe it does that multiple times. But it was always clear when there was a break, and also because it's El Paso, so the setting itself would look very different because the El Paso setting was like more of a desert and like more desolate, but then present day he'd be back in New York or wherever he is, and to be obvious that it's like this urban environment that's completely different. And so I think it separated the two pretty well. I was never confused as like what time it was or where I was. I didn't feel compelled to ask like, well, what building is he exactly in right now? And even then, I didn't really need to, because he was in continental establishments quite a bit, hotels, like you see in the movies. So I think they did a really good job of establishing where and when stuff is happening. When it comes to McLeod's idea of transitions, this graphic novel really did pretty much all of them. So, for example, like here's some excellent transitions, like action to action, for example. And they also do subject to subject. But there's all sorts of transitions, and they're pretty effective. I was never lost throughout this whole thing. I don't think it really uses the page as a mini comic idea. I think because it's split into 5 separate issues, that would have made it a little bit harder for them to use the page as a mini comic idea, because they were already splitting this up so much. But I also don't feel like it really needed it. I think that you could definitely make a case for each page being used as a mini comic if you really wanted to get in depth, but I always felt like you couldn't tell a story with just one page, if that makes sense. Like, it was obviously set up to transition into the next page, not necessarily just tell a really short story on its own. In terms of directional flow, it does a really good job. I think that the lettering is placed in a good place in the art to help the reader make the classic Z pattern as they travel through the page. There were a few times where the collection switches to a double page spread, even though it only used it like 2 or 3 times, but it did throw me off at first because everywhere else it's one page, not a double page spread. So there were those couple times where after I figured out what I was looking at, it made sense, but when I started I was confused because I was already working my way down here, but then I realized that I'd missed something somehow. Like there was an action somewhere that I'd missed, so then I had to go back and figure out what was going on. But I could have just been not observant because the art was obviously split between the 2 pages. There wasn't a clear dividing line down the middle. You could tell that it was one piece of art, but that was the only thing that really threw me off. Other than that, I think the directional flow in this is really good. It really helped guide me through. Personally, I think I would recommend this to my classmates. If you like action, if you like John Wick, if you want to know more about his past before the organization, I think you would really enjoy this. I don't think you need it for the movies. Like, I don't think you need to read this before the movies or after. I think that it's just for the people that want a little bit extra or are interested in the universe or John's past as a character. I would also recommend this to my friends because, most of my friends have pretty similar tastes to me anyway. Like, I know at the very least my cousin is also a big John Wick fan, so I would probably let him know about this if he was interested in reading it. In terms of other observations, I can't really think of anything. And my fun fact I was going to mention was that this, as far as I could tell, this doesn't seem to be mentioned or connected to the movies. I think it was made after the movies. So that might explain why I never, or at least I don't recall mention of Calamity or the 3 Bills or whatever they're called in the movies, but I suppose that would make sense if it was made afterward. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this. I was glad that it was one of the options made available to me because honestly, I'd never really read a graphic novel before, so I was really hoping I could find something that interested me at least a little. And I think having a John Wick graphic novel to do this project over made it a lot easier on me, honestly. In conclusion, this was a great graphic novel, and I would recommend it to you, once again, if you like action, if you like John Wick, if you just like a good graphic novel comic collection thing, honestly. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.